As mentioned last week, for the next 5 weeks we'll be reading from John chapter 6. So hopefully some of you did your homework and read John chapter 6 this past week. If you didn't, don't worry, it's the same homework this week as well. Read John chapter 6, then the week after that, the week after that, and the week after that, because we'll continue to read this beautiful chapter from John. And this happens once every 3 years. The church in its infinite wisdom says, read John chapter 6 in the gospel, and as a preacher to preach upon the Mass and the beautiful parts of the Mass, and of course including the Eucharist. And so I'll preach about a couple parts of the Mass today. Now next weekend we have a missionary priest, so I have no idea what he's going to preach about. I'm guessing about the missions. But after that we'll go back and preach about the Mass parts as well. And in particular today I want to preach about 3 parts of the Mass. I want to preach about being here. I want to preach about the offertory, and I want to preach about the universality of the church. So that it's not just here, us, at St. John the Baptist, but all around the world, people are celebrating the same exact Mass with the Eucharist, the body and blood of Christ. And what a beautiful, beautiful gospel we have today to reflect on. Of course, this gospel is very familiar, isn't it? We hear it every single year, because the feeding of the 5,000 is in each and every single gospel account. Every gospel has this miracle account. Of course, you know in the back of our mind that this is a foreshadowing of the Eucharist, that Jesus can feed us completely. But let's take a quick look at the gospel, and maybe a little deeper look as well. When we read it, we sometimes skip over it, but right away we see what? A large crowd followed Jesus. There's a large crowd present there. He was by the Sea of Galilee. The Passover was near, and a large crowd followed him. But not everyone. Not everyone was there. We'd have to imagine probably that some people said, you know what, I know Jesus of Nazareth is in town this weekend, or whatever day it was, but I really want to take a nap instead. Or I want to play rock, paper, scissors. So it's an epic game going on right now. Best out of 1,000. That'd be pretty amazing. However, you're busy doing this, and your buddy says, I'm going to see Jesus of Nazareth. Which one are you going to choose? Of course, we know which one would choose the better part. Those who were present were able to see Jesus take 5 loaves and 2 fish and multiply them to feed 5,000 men, not including women and children. So we could say about 20,000 people he fed. But the only people that saw it were those who were present. Here at Mass, something amazing goes on. Something greater than the feeding of 20,000 people. Bread and wine are transformed, in a certain sense we could say, into the body and blood of Christ. This truly is a miracle in our presence every single time that we come and celebrate Mass. Now imagine 2,000 years ago, you're at the feeding of the 20,000, and you go back home and you tell your buddy that was playing rock, paper, scissors, I just saw Jesus of Nazareth feed everyone with 5 loaves and 2 fish. They probably go, dope, I missed it. You know, when we go to Mass, what we should do when we leave is tell people, I just saw bread and wine be transformed, consecrated into the body and blood of Christ. I have Christ inside of me. But the only way that we can do this is as we come to Mass every single week. Of course, it feels like I'm preaching to the choir because you're here. You chose this over the pillow or the TV or golf, at least not golfing yet. You come. You're present. We do this every single week. The way we actually get anything out of Mass is we have to come. That's the first step. Every week. Even when you're on vacation, go to Mass. It's a beautiful experience. Of course, when we come to Mass, by the way, it's not just you sitting out there in the pews and watching me preach or deacon preach, or even us here at the altar. You participate in this Mass. You are a key participant in this Mass. Yes, by singing along with the hymns, by listening to the readings, by offering up your prayers. But I think one of the most important parts of Mass that we often forget is the offertory procession. Now here at St. John's, of course, we have a great offertory procession. We process forward with food for the poor, with materials for those who are in need to help with their parenting, to give clothes and formula to little children that need our help. And of course, monetary donations for the mission of the church. So please continue to do this. But during the offertory procession as well, what we are called to do is to give the little that we have of ourselves over to God and to lay it down at the altar. We see this today in the gospel. This little boy has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Barley loaves are food of the poor. It wasn't a rich man's food. Of course, we know that there's reference to the barley loaves in the first reading, when Elijah tells his servant to feed the 100 men of the 20 barley loaves, and him saying there's not enough. And Elijah says, God will provide. So here's this little boy. The little that he has, him probably being hungry, by the way, him saying, I don't want to give this up, but I will because it's to Jesus of Nazareth. Giving him those 5 barley loaves and those 2 fish. And look what happened. Jesus multiplied them to feed the 20,000, to feed them, to give them everything they needed. The small amount multiplied. Here at Mass, when it comes time to the offertory, what we are called to do, what you are called to do, and me, is lay ourselves down in front of God and say, God, the little that I have, I give to you. I hand myself over to you. Do with me as you will. Of course, bring an intercession with as well. Maybe to pray for a family member who's suffering. Maybe pray for a coworker. Pray for the church. Pray for the nation. Pray for a deceased member of your family. Say, I offer up this Mass for you, Lord, for you. And I give it over to God. And what will God do when he receives it at the altar? He will transform it. He will sanctify it. He will glorify it. You are participating in this Mass by giving your offering over to God. Today especially, think of something that you want to lay down before God at the altar. Who is it? What is it? And lay it down, especially during the offertory, to lay it down before God. And this so it can be even more of an active participant in this beautiful Mass that not only we participate in, but throughout the whole world they participate in. Of course, we look at the gospel, it's very important to see there's how many wicker baskets left at the end? 12. Why 12? Because 12 represents the 12 tribes of Israel, which means the whole world. Jesus has enough food, enough of himself, to give himself completely to everyone, not just a select few. His love, his grace, his mercy, he himself is limitless. And he's saying, come and take, come and eat, come and be transformed. I'll give myself completely. Something beautiful about the Catholic world, about the Catholic Church, is that the same readings we said today, the same prayers we said today, are the same exact readings and prayers they said in Tanzania. Yes, a different language, probably, I think. And the same in Ireland, the same in Europe. It's the same exact, that we come together as the universal church, the Catholic Church, and receive the Eucharist. These 3 parts of the Mass so often we can forget about, that we should come. We should offer ourselves, and it's not just us. But these 3 parts of the Mass, I think, are a beautiful part of what the Mass is. The beauty, the glory of the church. And realizing that there is something greater going on here than just the feeding of people with bread and fish. Jesus says, I give myself to you. Everything I have, my whole being, I lay down for you. Will you do the same for me? And if you do, I'll give you food. I'll give you myself that will lead you to eternal life.